and welcome to GDA Lessons Learned session. I am Raj Hajaria, Technical Manager with Gulf Downstream Association. GDA is a non-profit association established by Saudi Aramco, ADNOC, ANPC, API, and PAPCO. The main objective of GDA is to create a platform on which all the players of the downstream industry can share their knowledge and experience. In this knowledge sharing session, today I am going to share my thoughts on time management. We'll try to learn some tips on managing our precious time. So let's delve into the subject. But before we get into time management, let's try to understand what is time. How do we define the time? But even before we define the time, let's try to see what is our life. If I say life is a stream of experiences, we have series of experiences, one after the other. Then can time be a measure of gap between two experiences? And if that is so, then time does not occur at the first experience, the very first experience. No time. Only at the second experience, you can say some time had passed. And probably that's why the unit of time is second, because you cannot measure the time at the first experience. So having defined the time and the concept of time, let's get into our session of time management. In this session, we are going to cover two parts. First part, we'll talk about what's our dilemma, what's the challenge we are facing on a day-to-day basis. And then we will look into what is time management. And we will also look at what are the habits which govern our time management. And then we will identify individually what are our strengths and weaknesses around those habits. And that will be the end of part one. And in the part two, we will take these identified strengths and weaknesses forward. Obviously, the strengths have to be retained and weaknesses need to be removed. And the weaknesses will be removed through establishing new habits. And how to change your new habits will be dealt in the part two. We will also develop an action plan, individual action plan, which will establish those new habits. And finally, we will see how to realize the value of time. So with this agenda in mind, let's delve into part one. What's our daily dilemma? Too much to do, not enough time to do. How many of us have often felt, I wish I had more than 24 hours in a day? I think just 2 days back, someone was telling me, I wish I had 48 hours in a day. That's our dilemma. We don't have enough time and we have too much to do. So then comes the time management. What is time management? Everyone is given same time, 24 hours a day, no more, no less. Whether it is the president of USA or a person cleaning the street, everyone has only 24 hours. Yet, some achieve great success in the same 24 hours, others struggle through their whole life, again using the same time. What's the difference? What's the difference between that person who is able to achieve great success in the same 24 hours and the others who struggle? The difference is time management. They are able to manage their time better. And how do they do so? They succeed by making best use of 24 hours a day. When we say best use of 24 hours a day, meaning they do not waste their time through unproductive and unfulfilling activities. So the activities which they do on day-to-day basis are productive and fulfilling. That's the time management secret. And we will learn those things today. But before we do that, let's try to understand a little psychology. Why do we waste time? Do we intend to waste time? Do we plan to waste time? Obviously not. And still, we often see that time had passed and it is actually wasted. So we waste time due to habits. That happens because we have certain habits. These habits take over and we are almost like helpless in front of those habits. So time management is basically managing your own self management, which means taking control of those habits, managing, changing those habits. So new habits can be acquired. This is again a scientific research that if you do the same thing continuously, day after day, for 3 weeks minimum, in some cases it may require a little longer, but on average, 3 weeks continuously, if you keep repeating something again and again, it forms a habit. And mastering your time is only a habit away. So if you wish to master the time, please just introduce a new habit, inculcate new habit. And that's the focus of our class today. So what are the habits? What are the time management habits? What are the habits which impact our managing time? Attitude, goals, priorities. These are all habits. Do we have a positive attitude? Do we set goal? Do we set priority? Do we analyze? Do we plan? Do we schedule? Do we avoid interruptions? Do we do proper effective meetings? Do we do a good written effective communication? Do we delegate the job with our team members and subordinates? Do we procrastinate or we do not? And how do we work as a team? All of these are habits, and we will be looking at each one of them slightly in detail. And it's probably going to be a life-changing experience for you all if you pay close attention to this. And I request you all to please take a piece of paper and pen and keep it ready in front of you as we go through the next few slides. And the next section is identifying your strengths and weaknesses. What I'm going to do in this section is to pick up each habit one at a time and make a few statements. Some of these statements will resonate with you. Whichever statement resonates with you, please make a note of it on your paper. That is either your strength or your weakness. If it's a strength, give yourself a clap. But if you are, and how will you know whether it is a strength or weakness? You will see a statement with a green smiley or a red crying face. So by that you will be able to identify. So if you are ready with your pen and paper, let's start with the first habit, attitude. I'm going to read out those statements, and as I read, please see, close your eyes, listen to it carefully and see whether it resonates with you. Do you identify with those statements? And if yes, write it down, write some props so that it will remind you. You don't have to write the whole sentence. And if it does not, no problem, just carry on. I believe I can control or influence most of the things that happen in my life. I do some things at work which I enjoy, even though I know they are non-essential. I have a lot of self-discipline and willpower. I don't have enough time to do what I want to do. I still feel positive even when there are changes at work. I hope you have all listened to it carefully, read it carefully, and found where are you strong and where you are weak. Now goals. I write annual performance objectives for my job. I have a written list of long-term personal goals, what I want to achieve in my life in the next few months, year, or decades. I keep a master list of all the smaller jobs, assignments with priorities, which are basically a kind of to-do list or a journal. I constantly ask myself how what I am doing will help me achieve my goals. I review my long-term goals at least once a day. Now, if you were not able to resonate with any of those statements, then goal setting is a weak area in which you need to work, and we will see how to work on it. Let's look at priorities. I often feel driven by the urgencies of the day. I prioritize all my jobs and activities. I tend to do the quick, easy, or enjoyable jobs first. Unexpected demands cause me to constantly switch my priorities. I am able to balance the priorities among all aspects of my life. Analyzing. I keep a record of how I spend my time. So here we are trying to analyze the way we spend our time. I regularly think about everything I am doing and look for ways to improve my performance. I often find myself overcommitted and trying to do too many things at the same time. Multitasking. I am always fighting crisis, living from one crisis to another. I keep studying how my work pattern differ from day to day and during the day. That means I pause, look back, review what I have done, how I have done, and then move forward. Planning. Maybe many of us don't plan at all. That it straight away is a habit which need to be removed and replaced with a positive planning habit. But let's see. I start my day by preparing a to-do list. I always prepare a weekly plan with specific goals, activities, and priorities. I regularly coordinate with my colleagues on the work plan, activities, and priorities through personal or virtual meetings. I often get the feeling that I should get better organized and plan my work. I always leave room for unexpected things in my daily plan. That is called contingency. Scheduling. I schedule the most important task at a time when I am most productive. First of all, I should know when I am most productive. For some people, it is morning. Some people, it is sometime during the day or maybe late evening. I group similar tasks and arrange activities in a logical sequence. I often get distracted from my schedule and tend to jump from one task to another. I estimate time required for different activities. I can find quiet time without interruption whenever needed. And how to avoid interruptions? I analyze my interruptions and systematically work on reducing or eliminating them. I try to collect several things together while contacting others so that I don't have to interrupt them every now and then. I easily allow people to interrupt my work in order to please them. Socializing and browsing internet keeps me from concentrating on my work. Interruptions and distractions are common at work with me. Meetings. We use electronic means of scheduling our meetings. Our meetings start on time. Our meetings are not very well organized, and some of them are not even necessary. We often ask, how did we conduct the meeting and how can we better utilize our time? Our meetings have well-prepared agendas. Written communications. I often analyze my paperwork and electronic documents and look for ways to eliminate, simplify, or improve them. I use a manual or electronic system to keep track of details and maintain proper follow-up. I have trouble staying up to date with my reading. My desk is crowded and finding important document is a challenge. I have a good systematic procedure for storing, retrieving any information. Delegation. I confirm details of delegated jobs in writing. When a work is delegated to me, I promptly ask any questions necessary to clarify the details. I tend to get involved in too many things. I often do things myself because it is faster and easier than delegating to others. That also has an element of mistrust. I often forget to follow up or check on delegated tasks. That's the attitude of passing the buck. Procrastination. I tend to delay jobs that take big blocks of time. I have to wait for the right mood or the right time to tackle creative work. I often put off tasks that are unpleasant. I tend to wait until last minute. I often worry about making mistakes or wrong decisions. Teamwork. I use technology to save time for the people I work with. I often ask my teammates how I waste their time so I can improve. I regularly discuss team time concerns and problems with others. I never miss deadlines on my part of the work while working in a team or a committee. I am always on time and prepared for the meetings. That's the end of this first part, and I hope each one of you have been able to identify in each of these habits where you are strong and where you are weak. You don't need to discuss with anyone. It's for you, it's for your own understanding and taking it forward. Hello and welcome back to the time management GDA lessons learning session, part two. We hope you enjoyed the part one and ready to enjoy the part two. In the part one, let's recap what we have captured. We saw what is our daily dilemma, which is too much to do, too little time. Wish we had more than 24 hours in a day. And then we learned what is time management. And we said it's only a habit away. And by the way, all habits are interconnected. we learned about what are the different habits which will impact our time management. And those habits are these: attitude, goals, priorities, analyzing, planning, scheduling, interruptions, meetings, written communication, delegation, procrastination, and teamwork. We may be strong in one area, maybe weak in another area. The idea is to develop habits which are positive, contributing towards your goal, and also saving you the time. And then what we did a personal exercise. Each one of us noted down under each habit where are we strong and where are we weak. And now we are ready to tackle those weak points, convert them into our strong points. So those weaknesses are our liabilities. They sap the energy. They take our time away. They steal. They are thieves. We need to catch them and turn them into police. We become the police, catch the thief, and convert those liabilities into our assets. If you are all ready, let's start part 2. The part 2 agenda will be covering how to change our habits, and then we build our own action plan, which is individual, and finally realize the value of time. Changing our habit. So let's take one habit at a time. When you choose a habit, you also choose the result of that habit. That goes without saying. You don't change only the habit, you actually change the course of your life. Your entire life course can be changed by simply changing a habit. So all habits are interconnected, as I said before. So don't bother if suppose you are weak on one habit, but if you are able to strengthen your other habits, weakness also will be taken care of. So you need to work on any place where you are comfortable and encouraged to start. Let's start with attitude. First thing about attitude is to concentrate on essentials and non-essentials. Often we waste a lot of time concentrating on non-essential stuff. If we just pause and ponder several times during the day, we will be easily able to identify how we have concentrated on certain non-essential stuff around us. And then belief. Belief is a very powerful tool. Whatever you believe, you will achieve. If you believe you can control, you will be able to control. But if you lack that belief, that is the doubt. If you carry the doubt in your mind that I cannot, you will not. But if you think you can, you will. And then the third aspect of building a positive and contributing attitude is to avoid regrets. Never regret. There has been nothing which you did wrong. Never. Everything happened to you. Now what you have to do is take that as an opportunity to learn. So accept what has happened. Whatever has happened is for your good, and you need to accept it wholeheartedly. Any kind of blaming, criticizing, crying, or running away from it will not change that which has already happened. So anything which has happened, happened. Now I have only one option: to accept it. If I accept, immediately, first thing which happens, my mind calms. It does not go into any direction of blaming, criticizing, crying. I take full responsibility. Whatever happened, it's my doing, and I am responsible for it. I accept it. That's it. You see, you are in control. Immediately you gain control. Your mind comes under your control. Your mind does not take you for a ride. And then you ask with your controlled mind, what better I could have done? How could I have done the same thing in the past in a little different way? That's a logical question. Now you are not looking at what happened with a regret. You are now looking at what happened with a view of learning. You are now a student. You want to learn from what happened. So the happening becomes your teacher and you become a student. And then whatever you learn from this analysis, do it from now onwards. That's all. And when you have learned something out of what happened, don't you think you are now a little more wiser than before? And therefore, what happened to you actually made you wiser. And it was not something which you should regret about. Actually, you should turn back and say, thank you very much for teaching me this lesson. Thank you, and move forward. Now let's look at this video which illustrates the power of attitude.
There are three things in life that makes the person successful. One is the knowledge the person has, the skills he develops, and the attitude he has. It can be demonstrated by a very simple experiment of balancing the two heavy stainless steel forks on the edge of the glass. One fork represents the knowledge the person has. The another represents the skill a person needs to possess. And then knowledge and skills are individual to the person. They live with him and die with him. They cannot be passed on. But they can be connected to the society or the organization through another agency called as the toothpick. If you can see, the forks are hanging free on the edge of the glass with a toothpick. If you see, 3/4 of the toothpick is outside the glass, a small portion is inside the glass. Now what should happen if I burn the toothpick from inside? Watch carefully. I start burning this toothpick. What normally people expect is, as the toothpick burns, the wood burns and the whole fork should fall down. It would not happen. I can take another matchstick. I'll try to burn it. The inside of the toothpick. Not two. Even if you take 20 matchsticks, it will not burn beyond that. If you observe carefully, the toothpick is balancing on the edge of the glass, which is not even 1 millimeter thick. Two heavy forks are balancing on that. This is most important to us. Your knowledge and skills are important, but what is most important is the attitude which connects you to society and the organization. Among the three things that I have, glass, fork and toothpick. Toothpick is fragile, it can be burnt. That means in your life your attitude is more tested than your knowledge and skills. If your attitude is firm, in spite of being burned several times, it will not drop your knowledge and skills. Please watch carefully. I slowly lift the glass up now. You can see. Still knowledge and skills are held together by the attitude. Now I push the attitude out. When I push the attitude out, the knowledge and skills also fall down. Therefore, the most important aspect in life for success is not the knowledge, not just the skills. It is the attitude a person carries. Ultimately, that holds him in difficult times and make him successful in good times.
So that video teaches us, even in the current crisis of COVID-19, those people who have a strong positive attitude will sail through. And not only will they sail through, they will actually thrive through and come out a better people, better person, better organization. Let's look at goals now. Goal, which is we often call aim. How do we aim? Do we aim? Often we don't. We just go about our life haphazardly. If we have to set a goal, if we have to set an aim, what kind of aim it should be? We are all familiar with this terminology, SMART, which is specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, timed. And whatever you decide as your goal, write it down. Believe me, it works. You may think it doesn't, but it works. It works at a subtle level. Whatever you write it down goes as a picture in your mind and sinks in your subconscious mind. And from there, it triggers certain thoughts, and those thoughts drive you towards achieving your goal. And then remind of your long term goals at least once a day, at least before sleeping or as soon as you wake up in the morning. Remind yourself, what is my long term goal? Am I here to do something or just enjoy life? And then verify if what you are doing would take you towards your goal. Now, that's very interesting and important thing. You will be coming across many things during the day. You need to stop. You need to pull back and look at it and ask yourself, is it worth spending time on? Should I spend my energy on this activity? Is it going to take me towards my goal? And you will be surprised to find that many of these activities don't, and therefore they need to be ignored. So don't plunge into any action without asking what you want from it. So, what do I get out of it? WIIFM. What's in it for me? Be greedy on that count in any activity. Now, when I say greedy, doesn't mean personal greed. It could be societal, it could be universal, whatever. If you have the goal of spreading happiness, just ask yourself, what I am doing to do now, will it help? Will it add any bit of happiness in the world? If not, not worth doing. Move on. Have at least one significant goal every day. Yes, that's very important. Every day morning when you get up, make yourself at least one target. Before sleeping, I will do. It could be very simple. Today, I will make at least one person unknown to me smile. It could be a simple goal. And just go around. See how many people are waiting for you to spread that smile. When conditions change, modify goals. Of course, goals are not cast in stone. They change. They should change. They should change according to the conditions. They should change according to your growth. When you were a child, perhaps your goal was only to walk. When you started walking, your goal was to do only some playful activities which others are doing, but they have been changing. So you need to keep yourself open for a variety of goals as you grow. But all goals should ultimately lead to an ultimate goal for which you actually came to this world. And then distribute your time among these. Sometimes we foolishly take up a very ambitious goal and ignore everything else in our life. That will also sap our energy, that will make us unhappy, and that's not good for our life. So we need to distribute our time among family, career, spirituality, social life, financial stability, health, personal development, and a bit of leisure too. In fact, the leisure you cannot have unless you have spent time doing other things. The meaning of leisure is only when you are tired. And how will you get tired? Only when you are busy doing other stuff. But if you have been watching TV all the day long, probably that leisure itself will make you tired. Priorities. The key is not to prioritize what's on schedule, but to schedule your priorities. That's what Stephen Covey say. I'm sure you all are aware of Stephen Covey, who wrote Seven Habits of Highly Influential People. And he wrote afterwards an eighth habit also, which is very popular. In fact, these books and his work is the subject matter of many leadership courses around the world and in some large corporate houses. I know that Saudi Aramco Leadership Center, they are built on around the Stephen R. Covey's Seven Habits. Now, we need to understand that important things, what are important things? Important things are those that contribute significantly to your objective. So, first of all, you need to have an objective, and then you need to test what are the things which are important to reach that objective. And there comes something else which is called urgent. Urgent things which are immediate attention, they require now. They may not necessarily contribute to your objectives. It's not that they will not, they may or they may not. But majority of the time, these urgent things are those which do not contribute. They are just there because you ignored something else and they have now become urgent. I mean, I can give an example from a lot of my personal experiences, but one common example is attending to the call of nature. When you are going to start on your long drive, if you have not attended to that, that simple act of attending to the call of nature could become so urgent that you might have to do something drastic on the way. And it could mean even result into some accident. Let's understand the relationship between important and urgent. We all agree all urgent tasks are not important and all important tasks need not be urgent. Now, if you say that anything which is important and also urgent, then something you did not do when it should have been done and it has now become a crisis. So that is the crisis. And that's the one which we need to be very, very careful about. Now, if the something which is urgent but not important, then again, you have ignored doing something which was trivial at a time, but you ignored it and it now has become urgent. And anyway, it is not going to contribute to your objective, so it's not important. And one which is important but not urgent is the actual area of our focus, should be the area of our focus. So if we are able to analyze our activities on a day-to-day basis and find out what are the tasks which are important and do them first, they will not become urgent and we will be able to spend quality time in achieving our objectives. And this fourth quadrant, which is not important, not urgent, actually takes a lot of our time away. That's the thief I was talking about, time waster. Please identify how much time you spend on doing which are not important, not urgent. You started watching something on the TV, it drifted to something else, and soon after you realized you have been sitting for a couple of hours and you got nothing out of those 2 hours. So we tend to put off important tasks since they are rarely urgent, and important but not tasks are only 20%, but they give, as I said, some of those activities which are important but not urgent, if you attend to them in time, they will give you 80% of the results. And the converse is also true, that 80% of your time might go into time waster or trivial work, which will add only 20% value to your objectives. And most important, learn when to say no. You don't have to be a yes person all the time. When your colleague, your subordinate, or even your boss, when they ask you for something, and if you think you cannot do at that time, have the courage to say no. Let's look at this video. This will demonstrate the value of the priority.
Good afternoon, everyone. We all have this one life to live. A fleeting shadow amongst all that exists in this vast universe. We have the ability to accomplish anything, truly anything, if we use our time wisely. Is this jar full? And is it full now? And how about now? Is the jar full now?
Yes.
Yeah, it is. Now, I want you to recognize that this jar represents your life. Golf balls are the important things, your family, your friends, your health, and your passions. The pebbles are the other important things, your car, your job, your home. And the sand is everything else, it's just the small stuff. Now, if you put the sand in the jar first, you won't have room for the pebbles or the golf balls. And the same is true in life. If you spend all your energy and your time on the small stuff, you won't have time for all the really important things that matter to you. Pay attention to the things that are critical to your happiness. Take care of the golf balls first, the really important things. Set your priorities, because everything else is just sand. Yes?
Professor, what does the beer represent?
I'm glad you asked. It goes to show that no matter how full your life may seem to be, there's always room for a couple of beers with a friend.
So I hope you got some sense of this video where it was demonstrated that unless you give importance to your major goals in life and big chunk of your time is allocated to those, you will not be able to fit them later. As you saw in the jar, unless you put the large stones first and then gradually put all the other smaller items and the last being the glass of water, you won't be able to fit them in the same sequence. And therefore, in life, priority is very important. What are the large stones? Those large stones could be your family, your relationship, your happiness, your companion, your friendship, your universal love. These could be your large stones. Are you ignoring them? You will not be able to fit them later in your life. You will not have time to attend to them at all, and you will regret. That will be the biggest regret when we leave this world. So that is the message, at least I have taken from that video, and I thought of sharing that. Let's move on. Analyzing. Analyzing, most of us don't know where our time goes. Isn't it true? We never bother to go back and look at our day, how we have spent our time. Keep a daily log. That's very important. Keep a daily log of your activities and the time spent on each. Do this at least for 1 week or 1 month to know the pattern. You don't need to do whole of your life. Just build the habit of writing a journal. So before the end of the day, at the end of the day, maybe just mentally jog. If you are not writing it down on piece of paper, at least mentally you jog your memory and see where you spent how much time. And don't criticize. The most important thing is when you are writing this log, when you are reviewing this log, do not criticize, do not judge, do not condemn yourself for having wasted your time. Here you are only learning, and for learning it is important to not have any barrier of blame or guilt. You should remain open and let whatever lesson come. Yes, it happened. I accept. I agree. I have wasted time. Yes, what I have learned that I should not waste. So next day, afterwards, when same situation come, you are a wiser person and you will probably be able to save that time. And then ask who controls my time. That's very important. Do you control or the situation controls your time? Are you in control or someone else is in control of your time? You will be surprised how many times, how many situations you lost actually control of your own time. Then ask others how you waste your time. They may be able to observe you. You may not be able to observe yourself, but they will. So it is good idea to ask your colleagues, your friends, your best people are your family members. For the married, your spouse observe you the best. Ask them at least once a day, and they will be giving you they will show the mirror, the real true mirror of yourself, and trust it. Keep simplifying and improving processes. Can you eliminate some steps? When you are simplifying, you need to make sure life remains simple. It need not be complicated. If you are doing certain things in 10 steps, can you do it in 8, 7, or even 9 steps? You will be seeing that that person in the complexity will bring peace, will release some time for you to do other things. So eliminate some step, combine some task, align some task, remove some barrier, use technologies, whatever technologies you have at your disposal. Then keep record of crisis. You remember we learned about crisis in the matrix of important and urgent. We don't want crisis in our life, but we will have. But those record of crisis will help us teach some great lessons. So analyze those crises. Don't just ignore them. Don't just bury them in your memory. Bring them out, not with the idea of allowing it to suffer you, allowing it to depress you, but to analyze, look for pattern. Can they be predicted and fixed? Maybe a lot of those crises are repetitive. It has been found that a person walking on the same road every day keeps hitting the same stone or same milestone or same electric pole. Why? Because he's not analyzing. He goes through the crisis, ignores it, and goes through again the same crisis. This is very interesting observation, but it is true. Look at your pattern in your own life, and you will be surprised how many times you are repeating the same crisis over and over again. Planning. Planning is an attempt to control as much of your time as possible. We cannot plan everything. As they say, man proposes, God disposes. Not everything is in our hand, but to the best of our ability, let us plan. Do you know that when the pilot starts the plane for taking it to its destination, he has a plan. He has a flight plan, flight path, and he goes along that flight path. But you will be surprised that 90% of the time in his flight, he is not on that path. He is slightly outside that path, either above or below. But that flight path gives him the guidance. It brings him back to the path. If he had no path, probably he will go nowhere. He will probably go somewhere where he never wanted to go. So the planning helps in as a guidepost, but it need not be a binding. It need not be an obstruction for you to think of a new thing and change the plan. Now, to-do list is the most common example of the plan. I plan every day with a to-do list, but that does not mean I am bound to that to-do list. That is just a guide. I go along it. If something else happens, which is more important, I will introduce it. If I cannot do something in that to-do list because of something more important, I don't have any regret. I will fit in somewhere else. But to have the to-do list gives me a sense of purpose. It gives me like the pilot's flight path. Ask following 6 questions before you plan. What result do I intend to achieve today or through this activity? What must I do to get those results? So what are the tasks which I need to do? What are the priorities among those tasks? I cannot do everything same time. what is that which need to be done first. How much time will each activity require? This is the time estimates. When will I do each activity? That means you need to slot each of those tasks with the priority and the time required in the proper place. And finally, how much flexibility and free time must I allow for the unexpected things I cannot control? I always say to everyone that don't pack your day so much that you don't have time for any other uninvited situation to be handled. You must have contingency. And then be prepared for a productive start tomorrow morning. That's a very good tip I actually do myself. Before I sleep, I close my eyes, look ahead for tomorrow, and mentally make a plan. This is what I need to achieve. That plan works like a magic. When you are sleeping, that thought, that picture sinks in your subconscious mind. And you will be amazed when you get up in the morning how many new bright ideas and thoughts have bubbled up. Actually, that will help you save a lot of time during the day because you are prepared, you are mentally prepared. Scheduling. There is a time and place for everything. No argument about it. We cannot do everything everywhere and at every time or any time. Planning is the intention, but scheduling is the commitment. Simply saying, yeah, we will meet is not enough. We need to send the invitation. We need to put it in our calendar. That's what is called commitment. Unless you do it, there is no commitment. Scheduling is assigning a time slot in your calendar. We all know what gets scheduled gets done, isn't it? If there is something in our Outlook, it will keep on giving us alert. Even if we are sleeping, it will keep us giving an alert. Nowadays, it alerts on our mobile also if it is synced with our schedule. And leave room for unexpected things. As I said already, contingency, there should be some cushion. Create an uninterrupted block of time, which you should select as per your prime time when you are most productive to concentrate on important work. And that time you should not attend to anything. Even your phone, you should switch it off. Set a time limit for everything you do. Don't go overboard. When you have allocated a time for certain thing and the time is up, don't just keep on dragging yourself in that. This will build pressure for your other tasks. You can always come back to it when you have other time from the other task. Again, set prior appointments to meet people. Don't budge into everyone's schedule whenever you wish and like. You just try to seek their appointment, respect their time, respect other people's schedule as well. So we need to request for the time and respect it. Schedule regular time for talking with key people. Now, some people we need to talk on a regular basis, but those talks should not be haphazard. We should schedule some time. Now, for example, we have the management meeting every Sunday at 1 o'clock, fixed. Now that's regular. Now, nobody will forget it. Similarly, anything which is repetitive, you need to schedule it in a regular time, same day of the week, of the month, at the same time. And preferably at the same place will even give you better grip of the schedule. Interruptions, they are unavoidable. Accept uncontrollable, control the controllable. That's the key. Something which you cannot control, accept it. Yesterday, I planned to go out for bringing some food from a restaurant. I had made the order and the restaurant fellow said, I am open only up to next 1 hour. I said, I'll be there before that. When I went to my car wouldn't start. What do? I called the mechanic. He said, I'll come in 1 hour. I said, what do? I called the restaurant. I said, can you please keep the food for me even beyond your closing time? This is my situation. If not, cancel my order. And he said that no worries. We will keep it for you. You take your time. And I had to accept it. Now, I could have got worried about it. I could have lost my control. I could have been shouting at the rental car who gave me this car which did not serve my purpose. I could have done a lot of blundering things which would have spoiled my mood. But I said, no, that I cannot control. It has happened. Accept it. Now, what can I control? I can control my going to the restaurant. The worst is I will not have my food. Okay, I accept this consequence. And that's it. Keep record of interruptions. Who, when, how, long, and about what. So that record will help you to analyze from where the source of the interruptions and how you can manage those sources. Sometime you will know that some of the WhatsApp messages come from some group or some people who are time waster. Once you keep record of those pattern, you will be able to switch off. I have known of a friend who regularly clean all the chats of his WhatsApp, all WhatsApp group except his wife. Ask people to hold routine to discuss at one time unless some emergency occurs. So this is another very good tip of not having interrupted or not interrupting others. Collect the things which are together. So morning meeting, which we do every day, is that attempt. We don't disturb each other every now and then. We collect all our issues and things together and then go over it in one go and one time. Discourage walk-in visitors, schedule appointments. Periodically, let's say hourly, look at your email and messages. Instead of looking at every bell, this is a very, very strong habit if we can inculcate. We can set our own frequency of looking at our email and WhatsApp messages, but it is a very important. We should not look at our email and WhatsApp every time a bell rings. That distraction will not only steal our time, it will steal our mood. You are concentrating on something and then you are distracted. To bring back your concentration will take even more longer. Keep socializing, talk short. So if someone calls, someone gives a message, just say that, politely say, I am busy, and how about I call you back? And do call back. Stand up while answering the phone or talking to a distractor. You are in better control of your time. This works. This works. The moment you have someone who is trying to waste your time, stand up while talking. Even while physical meeting, you will see that your body language, we can send signal to the other guy that you are no more interested in pursuing the discussion and he will leave. Rearrange your furniture so that you don't face the door or the traffic flow. This is for the office environment. If you are facing the door, rest assured every passersby will look at you and you will have to greet him or you will be distracted. Get through the small talk quickly and stay at the main point. In open plan office, turn down your telephone volume, walk to a quiet corner to take mobile calls. Do not disturb your colleagues. That's a very bad etiquette in the office. Office etiquette has to be respected. My freedom should not impinge on others' freedom. We all have our own space and we must respect that space. After the interruption, train yourself to recover and return to main task quickly. Don't use the interruption as an excuse to drift aimlessly. First of all, avoid the interruption. But where you cannot avoid, at least train yourself to bring back to the task as soon as possible. Now, we waste time. What are the time which are wasted in the meeting? And you look at the picture, you don't want a meeting going on in this way. So what are the time waster in a meeting? There is no real purpose. Fuzzy objectives, wrong people, no agenda. People, and meeting is going free for all. Anyone can say anything. Too many people. Starting late. When you said you will start, you didn't start. Ending late. No results. And poor follow-up. What was discussed never was followed up. And these meetings are useless. They will just take away your time. So these are the time wasters of the meeting. So how do you do the good effective meeting, which is shown in this picture? Consider alternatives to meetings first. That means, can you avoid the meeting? Can you do something through a teleconference or email? If you have to have a meeting, then observe these things. Use software tool to streamline the process. Make an agenda and stick to it. Invite only those people who are necessary and tell them what is expected out of them. They should not be there just without any preparation. Identify specific results to be achieved out of each item on the agenda. I would like to share a funny thing about this item of identifying specific results. I have known a project manager who used to go into a meeting with the minutes already prepared. That was the ultimate of specifying result from the meeting. He would already have prepared the minutes which he wants to achieve in the meeting. Of course, I do not agree 100% with it. There should be room for flexibility, but that is a kind of how you can identify beforehand what you expect out of this meeting. Set time limit for each item, allocate time realistically, start on time, stay on time, and stop on time. Let people move in or out of the meeting as per the need. You don't need to have everyone present all the time during the meeting. If there are certain items require certain people, let them come in at that time. And once they are done, let them leave. Not everyone need to be there all the time. Stay in control. Promptly stop any digression from the point. There has to be a coordinator. There has to be someone who is controlling the meeting. And it should be known to everyone from the beginning that he has the authority to stop people from digressing. Summarize the results of the meeting and develop an action tracking log and maintain it and follow it up. Now, written communications. Clutter. Clutter has a habit, clutter has a nature of expanding to fill the space available, and it confuses and promotes poor work habits. Just look at your own desk. Even now, wherever you are, if you have loose papers flying around, isn't that causing clutter? And soon it will fill the entire desk if you have not taken care of them. And then what happens? You don't know where are the good papers, where you need to start. So documents, whether they are paper or electronic, they are important. They can serve as a security blanket. And if you don't have them, you feel exposed, as if you are open to any attack from any side. You don't have any defense. So written communication is needed to make things happen and to keep a record for future audit. When someone says you did not do it, you have an evidence that you did it, and here is an evidence. Documents can be either dumped or delegated or done or delayed. Any of these actions you can take. So you need to screen them. Every document must be screened on receipt, and then it should be sorted out either in action or for reading or for filing or for trash. So as soon as some document come, you need to sort it and put it in different basket. And once you have done it, you can attend to each of them at your own routine and as per your schedule. Don't set aside any document without taking some action. That's very important. Often we forget. Often we receive some important document and we have not looked at it. We have not sorted it. We thought we will look at it after some time, and that after some time never came. And months later, years later, you discover it and regret, oh, I wish I had looked at it. It could have done me this benefit. Develop routine and standard responses. Anything which is routine and repeatable, don't waste time in developing every time a new thing, as we are doing with so many templates for communication. Schedule time to read on regular basis and select what to read. Choose again a time when you feel like reading, and you must invest that time on a regular basis. Reading, I would share with you an anecdote of my own university. When I was graduating from my university and I went to my professor whom I used to adore and highly respect, and I asked him for one thing which he can ask me to do or suggest me to do in my life. He asked me to take an oath. He asked me to take a vow that you will never sleep on any day without reading at least one page or one paragraph of a book. And till today, I have not broken that vow. I still do that. At least one paragraph, if not a page, I must read from a book which will help me in my career, in my happy life, or whatever I have intended to do. Learn to read faster and better. Attend speed reading courses. There are speed reading courses, and basically what you do is you develop a peripheral vision. Most of the time we are looking at a sentence on a word, but if we spread our peripheral vision, we can look for beyond that word. We can look at the neighboring words, and with practice we can look at the entire sentence. And sometimes those who have got perfection on this peripheral vision can look at the entire page in one go. They don't need to read line by line. They just look at it and they absorb the essence of it. That's very, very helpful in today's time when you are bombarded with so much material to read. Ask following questions about any incoming document. Will I really do anything with it? If not, just say no, reject it. And if it is yes, then when will I do it? Where will I keep it? And accordingly, put it in that basket and schedule it for the action. And finally, clean out your paper and electronic files at least once a year and celebrate. When you trash your junk, that's the time when you need to go out and celebrate. Maybe have a cup of coffee or some pizza or whatever is your favorite. Delegation. Delegation means sharing your work with someone else. That someone else could be your colleague, could be your subordinate, it could be even your superior. Steps for effective delegation. What are the steps? Think and plan. Select the right person. You can't delegate anything to anybody. Clarify the responsibility and results intended. So when you delegate, you need to tell what is his responsibility and what do you expect out of that. Decide on the required authority level. When you give the responsibility, you also need to give the authority. If I say someone to call someone, I am also giving him the responsibility as well as authority to call him. He need not get worried about whether he has the authority or not. We should give that authority. Decide on controls and checkpoints. Now, you have delegated, but is it being followed? For that, you need to agree, mutually agree what would be the control mechanism, what will be the checkpoints. Will it be a kind of update every day, every week, every 15 days? Will there be a some kind of a message which will be transmitted between the two of you? Whatever it is, agree on that. Create a motivating environment. Delegation should be pleasure. One should feel happy to accept, and that happiness you need to inculcate while delegating, which means you need to inspire the person with whom you are delegating. If he's not inspired, he will not do it. And even if he does it, the result will be shabby. Hold them accountable. Of course, if I delegate something to someone, that person is now accountable for this. If there is a delay, it's not that you need to blame him, but that person need to understand that he is accountable, he or she is accountable, and that accountability will bring result. Delegation can be vertical or horizontal, as I said. In fact, vertical meaning going up and down both. Then authority level. It's very important to understand what are the levels of authority. When you give the authority to someone, you need to understand there are different levels of authority. And this is the levels of authority in increasing order. The least authority is you get the fact, I will decide. Or you give me the suggestion of alternatives, but still I will decide. You give me the recommendation and alternative, and I will decide. Now, from fourth onwards, I am starting to loosen my decision. I am trying to delegate decision. You decide, but wait for my approval. So I am giving him the power of decision, but not allowing him without my approval. Decide, act unless I say no. Now I am withdrawing myself further and I am saying, unless I say I am watching, unless I say you go ahead and decide and act. Now I am saying not only you decide and act, you act and only report when unsuccessful or feeling any barrier. That means I am removing myself from even monitoring and I am giving you the freedom to act and only report when you are not successful. And finally, just act and only report when needed. This is the highest authority. And imagine the load on you if you are able to delegate your task to different people with this authority. Of course, you need to decide this authority based on their competence and their capabilities. Don't interfere, undercut, overrule, or arbitrarily reverse any decision taken by them after you have delegated the authority. That will be demotivating. So you need to keep a watch on your their decision and also your impact and your reaction to those decisions. Delegate the right to be wrong and learn. It's very important. People don't do everything right from the day one. They will make mistake and we need to be open. When we delegate something, we need to also take that risk and accept that risk that they may not be doing it wrong, rightly, but that's the way they will learn and you are giving them that opportunity. Insist on results, not of perfection. There are people who go in mode of analysis paralysis and keep on trying to do perfect thing. There is nothing like perfection. We need to achieve results, and that's more important. And define what is achievable and target for that. Procrastination. Doing low priority tasks now while putting off high priority tasks for later time is called procrastination. And we often tend to put off something which is unpleasant, that are difficult, or that involve tough decisions. And yet these things matter most for our success. So things which are unpleasant, things which are difficult, things which involve tough decision are actually most important for our success. And yet we tend to put them off. That is what bad habit of procrastination does. Examples: watching TV while you should be exercising, having an extra cup of tea while important task needs you, calling a friendly customer who buys little while you should be preparing for a tough one who could buy much more. Putting off a task never makes it disappear. It's like sweeping the dust under the carpet. Yes, it will not be visible for some time, but when you dust off the carpet, all the dust will come out. So putting off a task will never make it disappear. Stop rationalizing your procrastination habit. Admit it. You must admit that you are procrastination. Don't try to justify if you have spotted it as your habit. Address it squarely and directly. Do the toughest job first. That's like a forcefully you exercise. Break complex job down into smaller steps and focus on one step at a time. That's perhaps one way to make your job simple. If there are too many things involved in a task, break it down. Start with the simple one, smaller one. Tackle unpleasant tasks in small segments or delegate to someone else who may enjoy doing it. You may always find someone who will be happy to do what you think is unpleasant for you and delegate it, or break it into small chunks where your Unpleasantness is not big, it is a small dosage. Give yourself a pep talk when facing unpleasant job. You need to motivate yourself, no one else but you yourself, and say, Raj, you can do it. Mitch, you can do it. Ranjit, you can do it. Don't be a perfectionist. Of course, I said always there is nothing called perfection. Only one thing is perfect, and that is nature. Everything else is imperfect, but striving for perfection. But that should not become our obsession. Get started and keep going. Promise results, so you will try to save your image. So you promise the results and you try to save your image. Why? Because if you promise, your image is at stake, and that helps you avoid procrastination. So make the promises, it helps. Promise reward to yourself for completing a task. Of course, you always reward yourself when you have completed a task. No one else can reward you better than you yourself rewarding, because that is self motivation. Teamwork, no one works in a vacuum, no one gets much done alone. We either help each other or hinder each other. Remember, you are there to help or hinder. You are there for nothing? No. You are there for always help or hinder. Treat others as you would like to be treated. The famous Christ's words. Set a good time mastery example for others to follow. And it is infectious. If you show an example of time mastery in your own life, you will soon see your colleagues, your friends will start adopting it. Ask others how you waste time, their time, and how to improve. Deliver the on time habit, deliver what you promise. If you start working on it, you will see how life changes and how your image changes in the eyes of your colleagues and your clients. Discuss goals, priorities, and plans. Take time to be a good listener. It's very important. We always jump into people while they are talking. We interrupt. No, we need to listen. We need to listen not with our ears open, but mind open, which means without prejudice, without any preconceived notions. Give people sufficient advance notice. When you want to do something with the team, give them notice that you want to work with such and such person at such and such time. So those are the tips for each of the habit. I hope each one of you would have taken some notes, and that would help you build up some positive time saving habits in your life. Now let's look at quickly how can you build your own action plan. So here I'm giving you a template which you can utilize in your own life with the notes you have made. You must have made notes of the habit you want to change. Now for each of those habits you have noted, answer the following questions. What old habits I want to change or eliminate? So you must have noticed that I am doing this and I do not want to do this anymore. So notice them, note them down. And then you say, what new habits I want to develop? Write it down. What steps will I take to be sure I begin strongly? And you need to define yourself. Nobody else can give you that step. What will I do to keep myself from straying from the new habits? Again, mind you, these are prescriptive, but it has to be self-prescriptive. If you take prescription of any steps from anyone, it is his steps, not yours. It will never be yours. You will need to be inspired by your own thoughts. Which people will I ask to help me, and what will I ask them to do? And you will always find plenty of people around you whom you can turn to for help. And finally, my friends, I want to show you and leave with you this value of time slide. If you think that time is of no value, please realize, please analyze these statements. 1 year. What is the value of 1 year? Just ask a student who has failed in the final exam. Now he has to wait for 1 more year. 1 month. Just ask a mother who has delivered a premature baby. She wish 1 more month and she would have delivered a healthy baby. 1 week, ask an editor of a weekly newspaper what it does to him. 1 hour, ask the lovers who are waiting to meet. It's like eternity. 1 minute, ask the person who has missed the train, bus, or plane. I'm sure it has happened with you sometime in life. Just think, what's the value of that 1 minute? 1 second, ask a person who has survived an accident. And again, this has happened in our life. We were about to fall and didn't. That some 1 second of awareness saved us. That 1 second, how valuable it is. And that 1 millisecond, how valuable it is. Ask that person who just won a silver medal in the Olympics. Just that 1 millisecond more he could have, or 1 millisecond less, he could have been a gold winner. These are some of the examples to reflect upon and to understand the value of time. Even a millisecond is so important. So time waits for none. Treasure every moment you have. That's all I have to share with you. And you can ask me any question, you can unmute. I'm now open for any Q&A.
Okay, somewhere in the earlier slides you mentioned we should have a specific time for checking emails, not checking at every bell, right? But now I'm thinking I am a staff. I'm not really management as such, so I am answerable to someone, correct? So how does that? I mean, does it apply to me? Because if tomorrow my boss tells me, no, did you not see that email? I cannot tell him I was waiting for my time, right? Or, I was systematically doing it. Maybe that email would have been more important.
Good question. Good question. And I think, Rolly, you have put yourself in you have defined your role, and your role is such that you need to answer every call. It's like a receptionist. Someone is sitting at the door and answering calls. They cannot say that I will answer call only every 5 minutes. So your role is such that you need to answer. You need to look at. That's your role. So you cannot apply this. But we are talking about the role where you are not in that situation. But even here, Rolly, if you probably devise ways, I have seen people putting different kind of alarm in their WhatsApp and email messages. This alarm if it is from this person, this alarm if it is from this person. You can define perhaps an alarm and make your phone email at silent mode. Silent meaning it will not pop up any message, but that sound of the alarm will tell you. And when you listen to the alarm, you decide, okay, this alarm is from such and such person, and I need to respond to that. Then you look at it. But from other friends, colleagues, some other people, if that alarm and bell rings, you ignore it. So you can still manage.
Okay, that's a good way of doing it. Thanks, Raj.
Yeah, welcome. Any other question? Please unmute one at a time. Let me ask one by one so that it's easier for you. Starting with Ranjit. Ranjit, do you have any question or comment? You can unmute.
No, sir. But just a quick question. I mean, a question. You were saying that in the first slide, on the first phase, you are saying when somebody asks us anything, in order to please them, we leave the work and we do for them. Is that a good approach or a bad approach?
Well, as I said to you, that doing something just to please that person definitely is neither helping you nor the work. Probably it is just helping that person, but it's not going to fulfill your goal and your responsibilities. So you need to weigh. Obviously, sometime we need to be very, very, careful. Sometime, like for example, I'm just throwing a wide example. If suppose our chairman ask us to do something and we need to do it, We cannot say that, it's not fitting in my schedule or it's not happening. I will do it tomorrow. No, that sets the priority. So the priority of your task should change depending on from where it is coming, from where the request is coming. If there is an important client waiting for you to do something, that takes the priority. You need to please that client. That's your role. You understand, Ranjit? That's your role. You cannot make your client unhappy. So I cannot give you one answer for all the situations. Every situation will demand a different, approach. But in general, you should not do everything just to please people. Okay?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's move on. Gorak, you have anything? Gorak, please unmute.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I like this session very much, and many things are clear to me now. Where I got the directions where I need to work upon, and what things I need to do. So thank you very much for this session.
Okay. Thanks for your comment. Please unmute yourself. Mute yourself. We move on. Mitch.
Hi, sir. Hello, everyone. No comments from my side, sir. But I have a question though. Sometimes, sir, when especially when you work on creative stuff, you have to find the perfect mood for the work. And I know that, of course, you can't waste your time. So what are the ways where we can maximize, sir, building? Sir, because sometimes when we're doing creative stuff, you have to find the mood. Let me rephrase my question. The problem, sir, is that while finding your mood or while getting into that mood or doing some research, you start to admire some other creative stuff. So what is your advice on that so that we can stay focused on what we're supposed to do?
Absolutely. Fantastic question. For every creative mind, this is a dilemma. When you start getting creative, your mind wanders and mind starts going into the directions of your liking. Our mind has a habit of flowing into the direction where it has tendency to, if you have a liking for certain thing, your mind will naturally flow towards that. If you like a certain sound or music or visual, your mind will go helplessly. It requires discipline. It requires discipline. And remember one word, Mitch, analysis paralysis. Don't be a victim. Don't get paralyzed by analysis. And remember, there is nothing called perfection. Perfection is not in what you are doing, but in your attitude. Your perfection should be is a combination. Perfection is a combination of results, not only the results, but timely result. Also, it should serve the purpose. So there is a purpose for which you are doing something, and there is a time by which you are doing something. If all of these are satisfied, then stop. Don't go beyond, because there is no limit. The sky is the limit to perfection. And if we let our mind drag on that, there is no end to it. And this is a common problem with people who have creative mind. So this is my tip: analysis paralysis. You have to stop. You have to keep focused on the purpose and the time both, because a result, a perfection is a combination of this. Perfection, 80% if you have achieved your result and purpose, then you don't need to worry about the extra 20% perfection, because after a while, any perfection will be so incrementally small that it will not be noticeable by majority of the people. Unless you are a painter and you have no time limit, and unless you are involved into only one task, there is no need to go into the mode of letting the mind freely flow into the direction it chooses. So a little bit of discipline, I will say, is important. And another point which I would like to address, Mitch, which is very important, is you said when you want to do a creative work, you are looking for a creative mood. You need a creative mood. And sometimes this creative mood may not happen. Sometimes this may not happen at a time when you want it. What do you do about it? My suggestion is, and my own practice and my own way of working is, I defocus, I switch off from what I'm doing, and I retrieve into an area of my memory or my own experience where I can draw upon some inspiration, and I motivate myself and I create the mood for the creativity. I don't wait for the mood to happen, I create the mood. And there are several techniques by which you can do this and you can achieve it.
Thank you, sir. That's really helpful.
Thank you. We move on. Amal, do you have anything?
No, thank you. I don't have any comments. Thank you for the valuable information.
Okay, I hope it was useful and helpful. Did you take some notes?
Yeah.
Great, great. We move on. Jessica?
No questions, Raj. It was a good presentation. Even though many times we know so many things, they only come into realization when we hear it from a different person. I feel that's.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And who else is there? Mark?
Yes, sir. First, thank you for sharing these presentations. I have one question in mind. Aside from accepting, how do you handle those things which we cannot control?
Okay, so the question is accept things which are not controllable and control what is controllable. You are talking about it. And what is your question? How can I control which is uncontrollable? Is that the question?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Can I share with you a prayer? I'm sure you all know about it. It's called Serenity Prayer. It's called Serenity Prayer. And it says, God grants me the serenity to accept what I cannot control or change. Give me the courage and strength to change and control that I can. And finally, God, give me the wisdom to understand the difference between the two. I don't know if I answered your question, Martin, but it is something internal. Each one of us need to ask ourselves, what is control, what is in my control and what is not in my control. It's a part of your own wisdom, and your wisdom will tell you, this is something which is not in my control. I accept. This is in my control. Let me control. My example of last food and car broke down, probably you can take some hint from there.
Yeah, I don't have any question. I just want to thank you because there's so much valuable tips to reflect on, and hopefully you'll be able to apply it.
And truly, I am grateful to all of you for giving your so much attention and time and sparing your attention to listening. And I hope this will help all of us. I have learned something from this session, and thank you for all of that. Thank you. God bless.